Well, thanks for throwing another log on the fire, Joran. Now we can say that this
Hey,
is a fireside chat.
zing.
Very cool.
Getting warmed up.
Yes, we're just getting warmed up. So, yes, so Rachel Leigh here, and I reached out to Joran because recently started working in closer proximity with him and wanted to ask him some questions that have just been burning in my brain.
Like the fire, like the fireplace.
I get it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
punny.
Hmm.
I thought that we could maybe just do this and record it and kind of see what happens. So thanks for offering some of your time, Dorn. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So let's dive in.
sure.
Number one, I'm now I've been pulled into this world of visual consulting, right? So help me understand, and potentially anybody else that would watch this, what the heck is visual consulting and facilitation, and how did you get into an obscure field like that?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'd say visual consulting began, back in the late 60s, early 70s when I think the man's name was John Ball. One of my friends and mentors, David Sibbett, who's kind of one of the grandfathers of visual consulting, that told me the story of this guy who was across the hallway from him back in the early 70s. And his thing was he would draw a picture of a rainbow with a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And that was a visual that they would use on a flip chart or a whiteboard or a chalkboard to communicate sales goals or strategy or ranking or organizing data in a way that needed to be visualized. And that was just the go-to, right? That was Ball's go-to, was the rainbow and the pot of gold. And it wasn't long after that David founded The Grove, his own consulting company, and developed what he called group graphics, it wasn't just a linear display of information. You needed sometimes just a poster display or a radial display or a popcorn display. Like there were all these different ways to visualize and synthesize information within a group. And so, the Grove's group graphics were born. I mean, that's really kind of the genesis of what I would call visual consulting. I mean, there are, consultants, briefcase consultants, going all the way back to the 50s that don't use graphics. The big four consulting agencies will, their deliverables might be a PowerPoint or a spreadsheet. And while those things require eyeballs to look at, I wouldn't call those visual tools. Visual consulting now, in the modern age, in the contemporary age, is using things like butcher paper on a wall and using artists or graphic recorders to reflect back the conversations or the data points that you're trying to capture, or using visually collaborative tools like Mural or Miro to actually do the work asynchronously or in person to, drive outcomes or arrive at a consensus, or, just map or heat map, So visual consulting's come a long way from the rainbow and the pot of gold, but that's, I think, in a nutshell what it is. And I think the other thing to know that's important for context is that there are different types of consulting. There are expert consultants who will come in and be able to lend their expertise within an organization based on their decades of experience in adjacent or parallel, sometimes, industries. There is the pair of hands consultant that will come in and just do work, right? Do some research or help with some of the heavy lifting of a project, sometimes a design project or a project product or project management within an organization, because the organization doesn't have the staff, and they need to bring in an extra pair of hands. There is the kind of doctor-patient relationship in consulting, where somebody would come in and diagnose a problem and make some recommendations, which could include coaching. And there's the process, what's called the process consultant, which comes in to an organization, reflects the organization's thinking, and enables and facilitates the leaders within the organization to make informed and empowered decisions within the business. They're not making the recommendations. They're not bringing any particular expertise, but they are helping to design a process which educates and informs the organization and the leaders within to actually drive the business. So I would say visual consulting is a form of process consulting. If you want to get like really geeky about it, right, then that I think is important context to have. The first answer, though, I think is the Swiss Army of like, we're using graphics and we're reflecting the bright line through your thinking, through creativity and visual information and using visual tools. That for me is how I would define visual consulting.
Okay. So you, with Illustrious, then you essentially are process consultants, is what I heard in that, through these various tools that you mentioned, and kind of like techniques or standards.
Mhm.
And who better to bring into an organization than an artist and a creative if you're looking for change or innovation or creative ideas? I mean, sometimes it's difficult when when something's so close to the tip of your nose, you can't really see it. You do have to pan out a little bit farther and get a different perspective. So that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
the second part of that was how did I
yeah,
arrive at this, right?
exactly. Yeah. How did you
Um,
get into a field like this?
so because my background was in marketing for over a decade, I was in media at an alt weekly, and I did marketing and promotions and PR for a media company. And so afterward, I got into some other creative work, but and coaching, and I took some time off and started a couple of businesses of myself. I owned a wellness center for a while, but eventually I landed at a consultancy where they needed a graphic recorder. They just needed an artist to come in and draw pictures during business meetings. That's how it was sold to me. And when I saw the ad, I thought to myself, well, I've seen that happen. I've been to TED Talks and South by Southwest, and I've seen that artist at an easel next to the stage, or sometimes even on stage, but under a spotlight over there, and like doing the work and capturing the talk or the panel discussion or whatever. And I thought, man, I had no idea people were being paid to do that work. I didn't know that was a career. I didn't know that was something you could do. And because of my art background and design background, I thought, that's a no-brainer. I can do this easy. I can do this literally with one hand tied behind my back. And I went into the consultancy. They brought me on and trained me as a graphic recorder. And I grew within that environment to train other graphic recorders. I then became a facilitator and kind of what you might call a junior consultant, training under the CEO and our chief innovation officer, who was leading all of the engagements. And so I began to take some of the consulting work on and learned how to facilitate, and then trained other facilitators to do that work. And so it was a naturally scalable, as the company grew and as our client base grew, the team grew, and I helped lead that team and train that team. And I'd say at the end of the beginning of the end of 2020, there were a bunch of us that were laid off from the consultancy, and three of us kind of said, well, we still love doing this work. Why don't we keep doing this work and helping businesses? And I began Illustrious in November of 2020.
Awesome. So, well, that's fantastic. And it like everything else, with a creative, again, you just kind of fall into it, right? And don't realize the pot of gold that you're sitting on until somebody reflects it back to you.